Okay, so I'm going over the dystopian water wheel phase 1 today. So you're going to start this by like doing brainstorming, and you're going to come up with like different rooms. First, you should like brainstorm different rooms. Like, oh, I could do a kitchen, I could do a laundry room, and you're going to come up with, maybe 4 rooms that you can, or more, that you can possibly do. Then under each room, you're going to be like, okay, well, what are some, and when you're picking rooms, pick rooms that might have things that rotate in it. Okay, so like kitchen, it might have a blender, it might have a mixer. Think of all the things that rotate in that room. Okay, laundry room has a washer and dryer. I have a feeling that a washer and dryer probably have similar RPM, and you should pick 2 machines that have different RPMs. So I would investigate that before I chose that as an option. Office, you could have like a fan, a pencil, not a pencil sharpener, a clock, those kind of things, okay? So those are just some general ideas, but then you're gonna go, and I think probably the easiest way to figure this out is maybe using AI. But I just typed into AI, what is the RPM of a blender? And it comes up with a certain number. Or you can like look up a specific blender. And so it says it ranges from 10,000 to 30,000 RPM. So I'm gonna choose, I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna go on the low side. Or maybe maybe you really like your smoothies, blended really well. So maybe you're gonna go on the high side, but you're gonna choose a number, 30,000 RPM. And you're gonna do this for all the different machines. You can also go and look up, I think it's kind of interesting to look up the torque. So I'm gonna look up the torque on the AI. So torque of a blender. Let's see if he gives me an answer. So it doesn't really give a torque answer. So if you can't find torque, not a big deal. All right, so once you have your RPM, you're gonna go on to the next phase of this, which is you're gonna try to like be calculating gear ratios, okay? So we said that our blender has an RPM of 30,000. Now, what else do we know? We know that our input RPM from our water wheel is 30, okay? And we know that our minimum gear diameter is 8 inches, and our maximum gear diameter is 32 inches. So we know that our maximum gear ratio is going to be 1 to 4, okay? So if we're starting at 30 and we're going to 30, we want to increase that as much as possible. So I'm trying to look up the project description while I talk to make sure I'm not missing anything. All right, so yes, calculate the new gear ratio. Okay, so when we try to find out the gear ratios, remember that we have our input RPM times the inverse of the gear ratio is equal to, that's a -1, is equal to our output RPM. Okay, so this, another way of writing this is our input times 1 over the gear ratio is equal to our output. Now, if we multiply this times the gear ratio on both sides, we can rearrange this algebraically, and we can say, oh, our gear ratio is equal to our input over our output. So for us, we have an input of 30 and an output of 30,000. So that's going to give us, let me change my color here. That's going to give us 1 over 1,000. That's going to be our gear ratio. So how are we going to get that? So what we're going to do is we have, okay, so our maximum gear ratio is 1 to 4. So if we have 1 to 4 times 1 to 4, that's going to give us 1 to 16, right? Times 1 to 4. And we can keep multiplying this. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is going to be 64, right? Times 1/4. So then 64 times 4 is 16, 24, 25, 256. So now we're at 256, right? Every time I multiply it, now I'm at a 1 to 256. And if I multiply it by another 1 over 4, then it's going to be 120 over 256 times 1/4. So if I multiply this times 4, it's going to be 24, 22, 8, 9, 10, 1,024, right? So that's going to give us 1 over 1024, which is pretty close to what we wanted. If we had tried 1 over 3, what would that have given us? Let's try that. So if we did 256 times 3, does that get us any closer? That's going to be 18, 15, 16, 6, 7. That would have given us 1 over 768. So I would say that's pretty close. I would say that's probably close enough. Now keep in mind also, though, that we said that our gear ratio, that blenders are typically from 10,000 to 30,000 RPM. So given that, if we do a ratio of 1 to 1,024, that's going to bump us over the 30,000 RPM. So you might want to choose the 1 to 3, because that would give us a different one. So here we can check our work now. We can be like, if we had chosen this, if we had chosen the 1 to 3 instead of the 1 to 4, even though the 1 to 4 gave us closer to 1,000, this gives us 1 over 768. So now we can check it. If we set our input times the inverse of our gear ratio, which is equal to our output, right? So if we do that, our input's 30. The inverse of this is 768, and that's going to give us our output. So if we get our calculator out, 30 times 768. No, that's okay. I don't want. Okay. Great. Where to have this at? Okay, no, I'll just do it on my other. I need to do it on my other. On my phone. So 30 times 768. Is 23,040, which that's in the range, right? RPM. Okay, so we figured out one of our gear ratios, which is fantastic. Okay, hopefully you're choosing something different. But now, now that I have that, it's like, okay, well, how am I going to make this gear tray? Okay, so I have this. I can kind of like clean it up a little bit. I don't necessarily need my little calculations on the side and whatnot. Okay, so I can be like that. I can bring this. This is checking my work. Check. Okay, so now I have these. I need these sets of gears, right? So this is my first set of gears. Okay, so I'm going to start out, we're trying to make things go faster. When you go faster, you're going from large gears to small gears. So a 1 to 4, remember our smallest diameter is 8. So if we take this and we can take this, I'm going to duplicate it. Okay. The smallest gear is going to be an 8, right? So this is going to be 8. So to get a 1-to-4 ratio, this would need to be 32, because 8, 8 divided by 8 is 1, 32 divided by 8 is 4. So that gives us, 32 divided by 8 gives us 4. So that gives us a 1-to-4 ratio. Does that make sense? So here, we're going to convert all these to our gear diameters. So this is going to be an 8. This is going to be a 32. This is going to be an 8. This is going to be a 32. This is going to be an 8. This is going to be a 32. Now here, 1 to 3, we can do any combinations. If we made this 8, this would need to be 24, because that would give us 1 to 3. But we don't have to choose that. We could have chosen, instead of 8, we could have chosen 10. 10 to 30, right? We could have chosen 9 and 27. That gives us 1 to 3. We couldn't choose 7 because that's smaller than our minimum diameter, right? So that wouldn't work. What if I chose 12 here? That would give me a 36 down here. This is too large. So I couldn't do that either. So I think I'm going to stick with 8 and 24. So now I know all of my gears, okay? So this is my first set. So I start with the driven is on the bottom, right? Bottom is, driving. Top is driven. Okay, so this is going to be a 32, and that's driving. This is the driving, and it's the driven one is going to be an 8. Okay, so now, but now because it's a compound gear train, the next gear set, we're gonna have our 32 driving an 8 again, but that 32, this 32 is going to ride along with that 8. So this gear pushes this gear, and then I'm going to change colors. And then on that same shaft, I have another 32. Okay, and then that's going to be driving this 8. Okay. So that, now we did this one, and this, we did this one and this one, we did this one and this one. Now we're on our third set. Okay, so now we go to our third set. I'm going to pick a different color. So now this 32 is going to go here. So now I draw my circle. Okay. And that is going to be driving this 8. So that's our 32, and that's that 8. Okay, so now we're on the fourth one. Now this one is going to be here. That 32 is going to be here, so I'm going to do a big circle. This is going to be 32, and it's going to be driving an 8. So that's my 32 and 8. Okay, and then now we're on our last gear, which is a 24 and an 8. So the 24 is going to go down here. Let's change to a different color. We'll do it yellow. So now this is going to be a little bit smaller than my other big gears. So that's going to be a 24, and it's driving an 8. So this is my gear train. So my gear ratio is, I have 8 over 32 times 8 over 32 times 8 over 32. So we have our first 8, our second 8, our third 8 times 8 over 32, our fourth one times 8 over 24, and that's going to give me a gear ratio of 1 over 768, and it's going to have an input of 30 and an output of, what did we say it was? 23,040. Okay.